Jets Nation, welcome back to another Jets Media live stream. Today is a great day to be a freaking New York Jets fan. He fires it over the middle, touchdown! Garrett Wilson! The New York Jets tie the football game! It's a toss to Breece Hall. Breece Hall cuts up the middle. Breece Hall's loose! Breece Hall's gone! Breece Hall is gone! He walks into the end zone! That's a Jets touchdown! Sauce Gardner's there for the game winner! That's New York Jets, new Aaron Rodgers style of football right there. Breaking news! The New York Jets got him! Aaron Rodgers is officially a member of the New York Jets! The vibe amongst his fan base is just a really awesome thing to watch our fans have a reason to be excited. This Jets team is ready to take flight this year.
We're going to show the world today what Jets football is about. Let's go. All we need is us. All we need.
I got high expectations for them, and you should too. I really do appreciate each and every one of you guys. Let's go Jets. Jets.
Jets, Jets, Jets.
Let's go! Yo, Jets Nation, welcome back to another Jets Media live stream. Today we got a special guest in the house that's going to help us break down and preview training camp. Because guess what, folks? It's here! Training camp is finally here. Tomorrow it all opens up. So with that being said, without further ado, let's welcome the man, Matt O'Leary, into the show. Matt, how you doing this morning, man?
I am doing so good. I've been itching for Jets football for so long. The week of training camp is finally here. We're back, baby. Let's go.
We are back, Matt. It's been a long off season, but hey, I can't complain because this off season has been one of the better off seasons I can remember. I mean, probably the best off season I've covered on my channel. I'm sure you can agree.
Oh, 100%. I love the Rodgers saga is fun. Doing the draft stuff is always fun. But after a while, it started to feel like the longest offseason also that we've ever covered. I'm itching for it to be back. Games are going to be being played soon. It's the best. I love it.
It is the best, man. And the vibes are high amongst his fan base. There's a lot of anticipation. There's a lot of things to talk about, whether it's the hard knock situation, whether it's just training camp opening up, preseason battles, position battles, the hype of the New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers. Like, Aaron Rodgers is the Jets quarterback, and it's just like, yeah. It still doesn't feel like it yet, to me at least. Like, Aaron Rodgers is the Jets quarterback. I can't wait to be there this weekend to see him with my own eyes rocking that number 8. Matt, are you going to any training camps in the first couple of weekends?
Yeah, so not officially yet. I'm trying to go the Sunday, the 30th. That one I have a pin in. That's the one that I might get to. But hey, I mean, it sold out in 3 minutes. Jet fans are amped up to go to these things. So a lot of people, unfortunately, weren't able to get tickets. But it just shows how passionate our fan base is here and how excited they are to see number 8 for the New York Jets.
Yeah, man. I was at training camp last year, and the buzz was crazy. So I can't even imagine what the buzz is going to be like this year with our man Aaron Rodgers out there. Folks, if you're not subscribed to my man Matt O'Leary, make sure you guys do so. He just hit 18,000 subscribers, so congratulations, Matt. That is a pretty big milestone. And I don't know why. If you're not subscribed to Matt, don't know what you're doing, down below in the description, make sure you guys check out Matt's channel. So let's get straight into business. Before we get more deep into training camp and previewing that, I do want to talk about the situation with Hard Knocks because I find it pretty interesting, Matt. You know, we find out that the Jets are kind of restricting HBO's Hard Knocks' access that what they're usually accustomed to, right? Hard Knocks is known for having cameras everywhere in situations where, you know, some teams might not want to be exposed. Like, you know, a player gets cut, and there's cameras in his face while he's really upset and crying when the man's losing his job. And the Jets feel like it's inhumane, and they don't really want that access. And we all know that the Jets have been holding out as long as possible to try to not get Hard Knocks in the first place because they're very content with One Jets Drive, and they have access. The Jets fan base already has their inside looks. But now with Hard Knocks coming out there, the Jets are trying to stand on their toes and say, hey, if you're going to, make the show about us, we're going to do it on our rules. So what's your thoughts about the Jets not allowing HBO's Hard Knocks to get their usual access?
I love it because they made it clear that they really weren't looking to do it. They are happy with the own product that they put out there on One Jets Drive and all that. And as they should, it's a great, movie or film, whatever you want to call it. The production that they do, it's fantastic. But it's true. I always feel bad for the guys when they're getting cut because it's such a tough moment in their life. These guys dream about playing in the NFL, and then you get cut, and it's a big unknown of where you're going to end up next and what's the next move here. And to have that broadcasted out to millions of people, I don't know, that just feels wrong. So I think it's a good thing that they're taking the stance and not going to show it.
Yeah, I agree, man. It really shows you that this organization is doing what's right for the players, and they're really trying to, go on their own terms, because this is a team that not only do Jets fans have high expectations, but the NFL world has high expectations. And the one positive I can say about the Jets being on Hard Knocks is that it's going to prepare this young Jets team mixed with these veterans to get a little taste of what it's like to be in the primetime lights with the whole eyes looking at us. Because every week, everyone's going to be watching Hard Knocks, and there's going to be people talking crap, there's going to be talking good, and I think it's a good test for this mentality of this Jets team with having 6 primetime games on the horizon this season. This Jets team is not used to being in the spotlight. This is going to be brand new, and I'm not used to it either, Matt. So I think that, Hard Knocks could be a good preparation mentally for this team.
Yeah, you're 100% right. We're not used to the Jets getting all this attention and all this media coverage, and it's going to be, you're going to have the Aaron Rodgers haters or just the haters in general who will watch and try to stir the pot and get everything going. But at the same time, like you said, it's good practice because there's a ton of primetime games. There's very little 1 o'clock games on the schedule. So they're going to be in the game of the week and stuff like that at the 4 o'clock slate. So they're going to have a lot of eyeballs on them, and rightfully so at this point. And, Jet fans are just going to have to get used to it. And this is a good appetizer for that.
I mean, we're going to be spoiled with content, though, Matt. One Jets Drive on Mondays, Hard Knocks on Tuesdays, Matt O'Leary shows daily. I mean, what more can we ask for?
I know. That's something, selfishly that I am so excited for as well. The amount of content that we're going to be able to get out of not only Hard Knocks, but also One Jets Drive. And just, man, I'm just ready to ramp it back up in August. It's been a little bit quiet, from May to about this point is probably the quietest time in the NFL season or off season. So I'm just ready to get it going again.
Couldn't agree more. And the one thing that I was worried about when they announced that the Jets would be on Hard Knocks is, oh my, they better extend Quinnen. And guess what? They did it, Matt. They freaking did it. So what's your thoughts of the Quinnen Williams deal? We finally got the actual details of the contract yesterday. Obviously, we all wanted it to get done. We all had confidence it would get done, but we still have that Jets mind, that little voice in our head like, oh no, what if it doesn't? What if he holds out? Oh no, what's going to happen? But Joe Douglas said, nope, this is a new era. We're paying our own. And he gets a 4-year, $96 million contract. What's your thoughts of those contract details?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. It came in just a little lower than what I thought it was going to be. I was at 4 for 100 as my prediction for a while, and it comes in just a touch below. Cap hit is nice and reasonable over the first few years, and sure, it goes up. I think in the final year, it's just over $30 million. But number one, he's worth that. He's an incredible interior defender, and with the cap exploding, how we view $30 million now is not going to be the same in 2027. So I'm not really concerned about that at all. I think it's a fantastic deal. It's, he's probably under market value on the cap at least over the next 3 years. So that just allows you to continue to add more in this window of competition that you've, given yourself by trading for Aaron Rodgers.
Exactly. And ironically enough, some people might not know this, but the Jets freed up more cap for this season. And we know that there's a player like Dalvin Cook that the Jets are interested in, and Dalvin Cook's interested in the Jets. We still have a lot of Jets fans, including myself, that would welcome the return of Quan Alexander. So do you think there's an opportunity for the Jets to add one of those two players or maybe another player as training camp goes. Do you see it as a realistic option for the Jets to go after Dalvin Cook and Quan Alexander?
Yeah, I think there's a chance they could land both of them. I don't think either is going to be crazy costly. Maybe Dalvin Cook a little bit more, but I really love the idea of bringing back Quan Alexander. I thought he was a really good role player for this team last year. And, with all due respect to Jamie and Sherwood, he's a young player who is making a transition from safety to linebacker. And if he's put in that linebacker 3 role, and God forbid there's an injury to CJ Mosley or Quincy Williams, he's not very experienced. So can he come in and play well? It's certainly a possibility, but the unknown, I think, scares me a little bit. And when you're in a position for where you're going for it, like this is a team and a roster where they are going to try to compete for a championship, I think you should try to plug up any hole that you may have. So bringing in Quan makes sense. And for Dalvin, they've shown a lot of, legit interest. And if they want to bring on Breece Hall a little bit slowly and add a veteran into what is an otherwise really young running back room, then they have the money to do that now as well.
Yeah, it is interesting, man. The Jets seem to be in on any free agent that comes available. And the Dalvin Cook situation is an interesting one because when you look at this roster at the running back position, it's like we got Breece, who we know is a stud, but the unfortunate reality is he's coming off an ACL. And then we have a promising rookie. We have Carter. We got Bam. But like Dalvin Cook, he's a 4-time Pro Bowler. And I know he's 27 years old and in the running back position right now is kind of being talked about a lot in terms of the market value and stuff, which I find really interesting. But the way I look at it is Dalvin Cook is more than a running back. He's a weapon. He is a playmaker. And the way that this Jets team is modeling their team is to go all in with Aaron Rodgers. So why not get more firepower for A-Rod, have a 1-2 punch of Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook, and still have Carter and Izzy and who knows, Bam, or whoever will make the roster at that point, fly in and have some certain reps. So that's really going to be fun to see if the Jets land Dalvin Cook. But at the same time, Matt, it's not like it's a necessity. It's kind of a luxury. So if they don't land him, it'll be unfortunate if he goes to the Dolphins instead of us, as I froze. So let me just fix that real quick. But we're back. But I think that if we don't get Dalvin Cook, it's not going to be the end of the world.
I'm with you. I really like the Jets running back room. So I don't necessarily view it as a necessity. Again, I would understand if they wanted to do it and add that veteran presence. Like I'm not like I say, it's the worst thing in the world that you could do or waste of money. Like I get it, why they would want to do it. I'm not out on Michael Carter. I know he struggled last year a lot in his second season, but I thought he showed enough as a rookie for me to, think that there's more in the tank than what he showed in his second season. I am very high on Izzy Abanikanda. I think he's a home run hitter with his speed, and he could add special teams value as well. I like him. I think he, compares to maybe like a Leon Washington early on in his career with the Jets. And then Bam Knight, it didn't end very well for him. Down the stretch, he struggled a little bit, but there were some really nice moments early on when he first started playing with the Jets last year. I like those 3 guys. I'm good with them getting the reps behind Breece Hall. I'd be comfortable with it. And I think really more of the struggles from the run game came from the offensive line injuries down the stretch. They were onto like their 7th offensive tackle at that point. I think it had more to do with the injuries to the O-line than it did the running back room.
I agree. And don't forget, Bam Knight, undrafted rookie. I mean, he came out of the gate on fire, and then he kind of slowed down a little bit. The offensive line was banged up. So if this Jets offensive line stays healthy, with the addition of Joe Tippmann, it feels like an addition of Mekhi Becton if he's healthy, then this offensive line and the run game is going to be a completely different animal. So let's transition into training camp. What are some position battles you're looking forward to the most, right? Talk about that offensive line. That offensive tackle spot is definitely going to be, talked about a lot because right now, it's an open competition for both left tackle and right tackle. The Jets have 5 total tackles that I'm seeing competing for those 2 spots. I think the front runners has to be Dwayne Brown and Mekhi Becton. Max Mitchell can have something to say about that. We even have a veteran in Turner and then the rookie Carter Warren. So what's your thoughts of that offensive tackle position, and who do you think is going to win those 2 spots?
Yeah, you mentioned it right away, and for good reason. I think this is where I'm keeping my eye on the closest. At left tackle, I think Dwayne Brown seems like a very, very heavy favorite to win that. I know that, they said, Mekhi could potentially take it from him. I think Dwayne would really have to still look banged up from that surgery, and Mekhi would have to be unreal in order for them to put Becton in at left tackle, which, that might not be a bad thing. If he's playing that well and you forces their hand, that's a great sign for the New York Jets going forward. But I think more than likely it'll be Brown on the left side and Becton on the right side. Although I wouldn't discredit either Max Mitchell, who they like a lot, and I thought was, okay at points last year, considering where he was taken. And, I don't think the Jets were really expecting him to play as a rookie. But also Billy Turner. He started a lot under Nathaniel Hackett, who obviously is the New York Jets' new offensive coordinator. He followed him to Denver, so it's obviously someone that he really likes and trusts a lot. And Aaron Rodgers has talked him up a bunch as well. So I don't think it would necessarily be the most shocking thing if Billy Turner won it. I think Becton, rightfully so, is the favorite to do it. And if I was predicting, my prediction is that it is going to be Mekhi Becton. But if you're looking for, like a surprise or a dark horse candidate, because I feel like that always happens every training camp. There's something that happens. And you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting this or, wherever it might be with the depth chart. Billy Turner, the Jet staff might be a little bit higher on him than some might think.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think this offensive tackle spot is going to be really intriguing to watch, and I have to agree. Dwayne Brown's the favorite for left tackle, which I think Mekhi Becton's the favorite to right tackle, but you also cannot take, just forget about Max Mitchell. You can't forget about Turner because those are two valuable options, and the cool thing about this, Matt, is we have depth. And hopefully we don't need to worry about the depth because that means there's injuries. But hey, the Jets saw the craziest amount of injuries on the offensive line in history last year. So they're prepared for the worst, and that's what good teams do. And another quick position battle that's happening on the offensive line is center. I don't think it's going to be that much of a battle. I think it's going to be a similar situation. Remember last year, Matt? Oh yeah, Sauce, you're not a starter. You gotta earn it, right? It's going to be one of those with Joe Tippmann and Connor McGovern.
I'm with you there. I think Joe Tippmann wins the job. He was the first center taken off the board. The Jets love his athleticism, and they brought back. I mean, you mentioned it. Depth is so important because we saw it. Unfortunately, the injuries on the offensive line last year was crazy. They brought back McGovern on essentially backup money, so he could start if things go poorly in training camp or the preseason for the rookie. But I would have to imagine Joe Tippmann gets the nod here.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. We have an interesting question in the chat from Ricky, New York. He says, Richie and Matt, as camp begins, Jets trade Michael Carter to Bucks for a third that they package with a late rounder or Mims Bryce Hall to send to Tennessee for Kenyon Byard. You guys on board or not? What are your thoughts, Matt?
I don't know if that is a super realistic option, but I would be in on that. I think Byard is the roaming free safety that they are really missing. They brought in Adrian Amos, who has played free safety before, but he's not necessarily the guy who's going to have like 5 interceptions and be that deep safety. He moves all over the field. I was excited to see Chuck Clark, unfortunately, before the injury, but he wasn't really a deep safety. We know Jordan Whitehead's more of a strong safety, come down to the line of scrimmage and make plays. But if there's really one thing this Jets defense is missing, to me, it's that, ball hawking over the top free safety. And I think if there's any way that the Jets could land him, I'm for it. And if you have to trade Michael Carter for the extra pick in order to do it, then, you have the opportunity to bring in Dalvin Cook, who we talked about earlier. And if that's, the price of it, I'm for it.
Yeah, the only way I can be okay with that is if we land Dalvin Cook, because if we don't land Dalvin Cook, I'm not trading Michael Carter. We need Michael Carter very badly, especially with Breece Hall coming off an ACL, unfortunately. And I kind of like Michael Carter, man. I think a lot of people are down on him a little too much, in my opinion. He brings a different element to this Jets offense. He's not a home run hitter, but he is a very reliable weapon to get you that first down, to move the chains, to make people miss, to have that balance, to have that vision, and also just a really overall good character and locker room presence for this team. And you alluded to it earlier, Matt, this running back room is freaking young. And Michael Carter is a veteran of the group, and he's in year 3.
Right. It's crazy, right? Like, he's the veteran. He's the oldest one of the group. He's still on his rookie contract, entering just his 3rd year, where you have Breece and Bam going into year 2 and rookie Izzy. That's very rare for a positional group, but it's exciting. I like this.
Especially with the Jets. Usually they have a veteran in every position group to kind of like be the glue. Like, it was usually Tevin Coleman
yep.
to be that veteran, and then there's no veteran. And hey, maybe it's going to be Dalvin Cook, or maybe they run with the young guys. But folks, if you're just tuning into the show, if you guys could do me a solid favor by simply hitting that thumbs up button. We have Matt O'Leary on the channel right now. We got 32 likes. If you guys want to see more Matt O'Leary featured on the channel, smash that thumbs up button, but more importantly, subscribe to my man Matt down below in the description. He does a great job covering the New York Jets on his channel. So let's get more into some position battles. Is there any other position, maybe on defense or something, that you're keeping an eye on to see, to fight for a starting job, or do you think the defense is kind of set?
I think really the only spot on defense that I'm a little curious about is who plays next to Quinnen on the interior in their base sets. Now, they rotate the defensive line a ton, so that's not like, it's not going to be a player who's playing 75% of the snaps. So I don't really know how much it matters anyway, but there's a ton of different options that they have. They brought in Jefferson from Seattle, Al Woods, more the bigger run stuffing guy. I would think on early downs, like first down, it would be Al Woods. And then maybe, on second down, Jefferson's coming in, or they're pushing JFM inside, or Michael Clemens could come in and rush from the inside as well, with him putting on some weight in the more obvious passing downs. But, I think most of the defense is pretty much set. The only thing really that jumps out is, I guess, who's going to be in that first crop of guys. But as I mentioned, they're going to rotate so much. So I'm not sure that it's like this huge pressing thing that I'm going to keep a close eye on.
Yeah, and the cool thing about this Jets defensive line as well is the versatility that John Franklin Myers brings. And I love that Michael Clemens is becoming that miniature, well, not miniature, the man's massive, but you know what I mean, a younger version of a John Franklin Myers. And it feels like Saleh and his coaching staff are trying to develop him into that piece that could be a defensive end and kick inside a defensive tackle. So that's a really good job by the New York Jets defensive coaching staff to really develop Michael Clemens. That was a gem in last year's draft class, if I had to say. There's a lot of fun pieces to that defensive line to be excited about, right? Will McDonald, people are kind of forgetting about him. I mean, this is the least amount of hype I've ever seen from a fan base about our own rookie draft class. Would you agree?
Yeah, I definitely would. I think it's kind of crazy to think that this guy was a top 15 pick, and for whatever reason, he's not really getting the hype. And I guess it is because of how much they're going to rotate. And, Jermaine Johnson didn't necessarily play a huge role on the team last year. So maybe it's just because of the recency bias. We saw what, they had Jermaine do, although he had a couple nice moments. And I think I'm, excited about his growth going forward. But yeah, it's got to be one of the more unhyped first round picks to me. I feel like most people are more excited about the Joe Tippmann or Izzy Abanikanda picks than they are about Will McDonald.
Yeah, and I think the reason for that is because they didn't draft a need. They drafted one of their best position groups already, and they just keep adding to it. And some people don't see that yet, but I think that is a absolute home run potential if Will McDonald can be that closer, right? I think that's what their vision is with Will McDonald. Is Bryce Huff was the closer last year. Well, now we have two of them. We have Bryce Huff and Will McDonald, and we have Carl Lawson. And I mean, the defensive line, we could talk for another half hour about it, man. I mean, that's how deep and that's how talented we are at that position. But overall, man, I think this Jets team is ready to go for training camp. But when it comes to preseason, right? Preseason is interesting because we're not going to be talking about Aaron Rodgers. We're not going to be talking about Sauce or Garrett. It's more the under-the-radar type of guys. So what are some players in the preseason that you're looking forward to the most to watch play in the Hall of Fame game in week 2 and week 3?
I mean, I think it's got to be Zach Wilson, right? I think you want to see if he's progressing. Can he really be this team's quarterback 2 this year? It sounds crazy that a number 2 pick just from a couple years ago is now going to be getting a ton of reps in the preseason as, fighting for that backup role. But I think that's going to be really important. You got to be able to see if he can handle it. And, someone else who was taken not as high, but a second round pick is Denzel Mims. Is he going to make this roster even? Those are 2 guys who you thought, in 2020 and 2021 are building block pieces for this team going forward. Now it's scrapping for a roster spot. So those are 2 bigger name guys who I think are going to get a lot of run this preseason. And I'm curious to see how they handle it.
Yeah, I agree. I think Denzel Mims, he had a really good preseason last year, and then he demanded a trade, don't forget. But the Jets decided, hey, we ain't trading you. We value you as depth, as hard that might be for Denzel Mims to stomach. But when Mims got his opportunity last year, he didn't really take advantage of it. And this is a contract year for him. So that's going to be interesting to see. When it comes to that wide receiver 6 spot, right? Because that 5 receivers are set. Garrett Wilson, Lazard, Corey Davis, McCole Hardman, Randall Cobb, in no particular order. You can switch them around for all you like. But when it comes to that wide receiver 6 spot, it's Denzel Mims, but he's penciled in because I think there's an opportunity for another player, a sleeper at the wide receiver spot that I feel like not a lot of people are talking about is Irvin Charles. I think Irvin Charles has really he was really active in OTAs. He changed his number to 19. And the only reason why I'm saying that is to remind you guys when you see him in camp, that's who he is. Number 19 is Irvin Charles. And I think that he's a big-bodied threat that could fight for that 6th spot. Obviously, the undrafted free agents are really exciting. Gibson and Cap and all these guys. So what's your thoughts about that wide receiver 6 spot? And who do you really think is a front runner to win that?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. You mentioned Charles. Someone else that I really like. I'm on the Jason Brownlee hive. I really like his ability, and I think that he's similar stylistically to Mims, but let's face it, this staff wasn't here when Denzel Mims was drafted, and this could be their own version of they want to give their own guy a shot, and he was another undrafted free agent, but I think he has some upside. I really wouldn't put it past him to move on from Denzel because also, I mean, as much as we might have liked him coming out of college or seeing the potential, if you're going to be the 6th wide receiver, you better play special teams. And that's not really a strength of Denzel Mims. He's done it a little bit more over the last couple of years, but I think someone who can give you some special teams value is probably better suited to be a 6th wide receiver than someone who probably should have been someone who is a top 3 wide receiver in your system that wasn't necessarily expected to be wide receiver 6, but is kind of, floundered for whatever reason.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the Jets receiver room, when it comes to from the preseason perspective, is going to be really interesting because, like I said, the top 5, they're set. And what are your thoughts about the Jets wide receivers in terms of those 5 I mentioned? Garrett Wilson has that number 1 and all the other 4. Do you think that the Jets on paper have enough talent at that wide receiver spot in order to give Aaron Rodgers enough weapons as possible to go crazy this year or what?
Yeah, I definitely do. I don't think it's a top 5 wide receiver room in the league. I definitely think there are more talented ones in there, but I think they're a middle of the pack wide receiver room. And I think with the run game expected to be where it is and just having Aaron Rodgers here in general, and you have 3 tight ends that you feel pretty comfortable with Conklin, Uzama, and Ruckert, to me, they have more than enough weapons. Garrett Wilson's a legit number 1. He had 1,100 yards last year. I see him going well over that this year. I really like Allen Lazard. I feel like he's very polarizing with Jets fans. Same with Corey Davis. I feel like both those guys are very polarizing with Jet fans, but they're solid, steady receivers. And Hardman, I'm interested to see. And I don't think Cobb is completely washed. He's not the guy that he once was, but he's a serviceable depth receiver. To me, they have more than enough. I would say that they're an average wide receiver room.
Yeah, and I think Randall Cobb is going to be a little more active and make more plays than some Jets fans are expecting just because of the chemistry and the comfortability Aaron Rodgers has with him. And when I think of this Jets wide receiver room, what I like to think of, Matt, is, Aaron Rodgers' 2 MVP seasons. Devontae Adams was his number 1 guy. Devontae Adams went absolutely crazy both of those seasons. And obviously we're throwing Garrett Wilson in that, okay, that's going to be our Devontae Adams. Hopefully he'll be as good, maybe not, right out of the gate. Aaron Rodgers himself has made the comparisons. So we got Garrett Wilson as that number 1. But outside of Devontae Adams on those Packers teams, who's the wide receivers around him? Oh, Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb and Scantling, who's our Hardman. So, my point is, the receivers around Rodgers when he had those 2 MVP seasons wasn't like it was a top 10, top 5 receiver room. They had one go-to guy that Rodgers force-fed the ball to Devontae Adams, and then he had a reliable veteran Cobb to rely on. He had a young, big-time red zone threat in Allen Lazard and a speedy MVS. That's what I'm kind of seeing with this Jets wide receiver room right now.
No, I totally agree. I think they complement each other well. It's not like they all kind of serve that same purpose. And, when you have someone like a Garrett Wilson who, I don't know, 1,300 plus yards. It sounds crazy to predict for a Jets wide receiver. The last time, the Jets had a 1,000-yard receiver before him, you have to go back to 2015. It's a long time, but I think he is absolutely talented enough to be that lead dog. And they have reliable veterans there. So I think it's more than okay.
Yeah, and the tight end room is another position group that I think is interesting because no one's really talking about it just from the perspective there's not a lot of hype because it's pretty much the same exact tight ends as last year with the addition of the rookie Zach Kuntz. So Tyler Conklin, I had a high expectation for him last year. Was a little underwhelming, but at the same time, you go back and watch the tape and you look at the stats. He wasn't bad. It's just like you expected a little more. He had a couple drop issues, but I think Tyler Conklin and I think is going to be really impactful this season. I think Uzama is going to be that savvy veteran that's just going to be really clutch on third down opportunities and going to be that type of player that Rodgers gets a really good connection with when plays go, bad and things break down and Rodgers has to scramble. I just feel like Uzama is just really smart and intelligent player to just find the open space and give Aaron Rodgers a safety blanket. And then Ruckert has that breakout potential. So what's your overall thoughts of the tight end room with Aaron Rodgers? Because Rodgers is known to unlock tight ends, even tight ends that don't really have a big time name.
Yeah, 100%. The Jets really didn't utilize their tight ends all that much last year. I know Conklin finished with over 500 yards, but in the red zone specifically, they did not really utilize tight ends very much.
And utilized anybody right in the red zone last year.
That's a fact. An unfortunate fact, but a true fact. I'm excited. I think Conklin's going to be steady, maybe put up similar numbers to what he was last year, just because I think they'll spread the ball around more. So I don't necessarily think that like one tight end's going to have 800 yards and then, the other two don't get utilized that much. I really think Jeremy Ruckert could push for tight end 2 reps this year. I think he was that good of a blocker in the small sample size, and I really like his upside as a pass catcher. I thought he was underutilized as a pass catcher at Ohio State. And come on, Richie, Long Island guy, just like us, we gotta push the Jeremy Ruckert narrative as well.
Hey, I mean, last year was that memory we had together doing that pop-up live show.
It was great
from the main event in Farmingdale. It was awesome. I mean, Jeremy Ruckert's our guy, so hopefully he can get more utilized, and I think that he definitely has a breakout potential. He was a star of OTAs, by the way, because I believe both Conklin and Uzama were banged up, so it gave Ruckert more of an opportunity, and that gave him an opportunity to really shine. So I think the tight end room is going to be something that Jets fans are going to be glued onto, and I think Ruckert is going to be a player in the preseason that's going to get a lot of burn, as well as Zach Kuntz. And don't forget Kenny Yeboah. So that's going to be a competition in the tight end room in terms of who's going to make the roster or not. And speaking of the roster and the 53-man roster, Matt, are there any undrafted free agents that you're seeing across the roster on the 90-man heading into camp that has the most likely chance of making the team? Whether it's a Trey Dean out of Florida, I think that's a player who could be this year's Tony Adams. Like last year, he actually came in and was pretty good when he came in. I was very impressed with him. Or it's an undrafted wide receiver. What's your thoughts of the Jets' undrafted free agent rookies heading into camp?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Trey Dean. I think he has a really good shot, especially when you consider just behind the starters at safety, there's really not a lot there. It's a lot of youth and inexperience. So I think he has as good of a shot as anybody. But I'm going to stick with my guy Brownlee, who I mentioned as well as for that wide receiver 6 role. He's a big wide receiver. He has special teams ability, which is something that unfortunately Denzel doesn't really possess. But I think those two guys to me have the best chance. You mentioned Irv Charles, so maybe it's another wide receiver and it's not Brownlee. But I would think the spots where it feels like is the most likely chance is at safety or wide receiver. So pick one of the wide receivers that jumps out, and probably Trey Dean at safety would be my guess.
Any surprise cuts that you see on the horizon? Some people in the roster bubble. We already talked about Denzel Mims. But another position group that I think is going to be interesting to see is the corners. Right? We have the top 3 guys that are the guys. Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter II. We bring back Javelin Guidry. We draft Bernard Converse, who I think has a chance to fight Bryce Hall for his spot, and Brandon Eccles as well. So when it comes to the corners, do you think Bryce Hall is a potential cut candidate or trade candidate? Do you think Bernard Converse is going to take his spot, or what's your thoughts?
I do. I think Bryce Hall's roster spot is definitely in jeopardy. That's one that immediately came to mind. Someone else from that same draft class, Ashton Davis. I think his roster spot is definitely up for grabs. It's no guarantee at this point. And I really liked Bryce Hall. I thought he played well for this team when he started in his rookie and his second year. But Last year really struggled in the preseason, saw limited run in the first game against the Ravens and let up a big play, and then we basically didn't see him again. I don't know. That's a crowded and talented room. It might not be too surprising if they have to move on. So on the surprising cut side, I would say Hall, maybe Davis, and God, want to keep adding to that 2020 draft class. Mims too, the three guys. It's nuts, but who knows?
Hey man, Douglas made it up for himself in last year's draft class by getting Sauce and Garrett and Brees and getting us Aaron Rodgers. So you get a pass for your first draft class, and you did have Gase there, so it's okay, Douglas. We forgive you for that pretty bad draft class, if we're being honest here. Braden Mann, Morgan. All right, Mekhi, your only hope at this point.
Fingers crossed.
Pirine. Oh man,
I forgot about LaMichael Pirine. Oh God. Yeah, that's a rough one. Jeez.
Well, we're not going to talk about that because we have a draft class that we're excited about last year, a new draft class this year. We got Elijah Vera Tucker. We got Michael Carter, who still has some upside this season. And I do want to talk about the youth because I think that the youth with this team is kind of the core of it all. And that's where Joe Douglas deserves his praise, in my opinion, where, he's not perfect. No GM is perfect. He's going to have some misses, and we just broke down all of his misses in the draft. But when it comes down to the core of this team, we don't have Aaron Rodgers on this team without the core that Joe Douglas drafted and Robert Saleh has been developing. So what's your thoughts of the youth? Speaking of Elijah Vera Tucker, throw in Mekhi Becton, Michael Carter, Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson. I mean, all these draft picks in these past 3 draft classes has built this team to be there now to supplement them with the veterans that they have on the roster today. So what's your thoughts of the Joe Douglas draft classes throughout his entire tenure and how they've developed into today's world?
Yeah, I think they've definitely gotten better, right? Like 2020, we just talked about, was a little rough. 2021, obviously the Zach Wilson pick doesn't look great, and Elijah Moore is not on the team anymore. So that gets a little bit of a bump down, but AVT stud. I think he has the potential to be a Pro Bowl, all pro type of guard at this level. I can't wait to see him back in the mix. Michael Carter, the running back, I think is a bounce back candidate. Michael Carter, the second, the slot corner, is one of the better slots.
Low-key like the stud of that whole draft class, by the way.
Yeah, great value find. And then we know how good 2022 was, and we'll see what happens here in 2023. It wasn't as sexy, but they didn't have as many draft picks, so it's kind of hard to compare that to some of the others. But you're right. Like, Aaron Rodgers doesn't come here if not for the young talent, if not for the AVTs. Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, and give him credit too. Free agency, I think, has been one of the weaker things for Joe Douglas, but DJ Reed, home run signing to me, absolutely fantastic. So, it's really, they're a young core that has been supplemented with some vets, and Aaron Rodgers should be, I think, the thing that puts it over the top, because as we unfortunately saw down the stretch when they lost 6 games in a row, they're being held back by the quarterback position.
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback position has been the issue my entire life as a Jets fan. So it feels refreshing to have a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers to have that much excitement about. And I think the development of these young players has been really fun to watch. I think that this Jets coaching staff has had a vision with these players when they're drafted. And a player that I think, talking about a draft pick that's developing that has a chance to, kind of shine this year, and we talked about him earlier in the show, and that is Jamion Sherwood, because without Quan Alexander, it's your time, Jamion. And Jamion has been kind of underneath CJ Mosley's shadow in terms of that Mike linebacker. In case CJ goes down, he's that replacement. So he's been really developing into that mold. But I think that, when you draft a player like Sherwood that's that raw, that's making the transition from safety to linebacker, it's going to take time for him to develop. And I think this, from the Jets' perspective, this is his time. And maybe that's why they don't want to bring in Quan, because they have confidence in Jamion Sherwood's development. And we don't see what's happening behind closed doors. We don't know what's going on. Well, we will know soon with Hard Knocks and One Jets Drive. But I think that Jamion Sherwood, and we're just talking about random draft picks to develop and shine, has a breakout potential to fill in that Quan Alexander role next to Quincy and CJ Mosley. Not to say he's going to be a breakout all-pro, Pro Bowl type, but just a breakout candidate in terms of being a quality player on this Jets team that you got to tip your caps to the coaching staff for developing for the long term. Because the Jets and Robert Saleh, they've always said they give 3 years to their draft picks to prove what they got. Well, this is Sherwood's third year, and this might be his first opportunity to start from week 1.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity for him, as you said, because right now, Kwan's not here, so we have to assume that he's not going to be until proven otherwise. And it's a big step up. He hasn't played a ton of snaps yet, but the staff likes him a lot. It feels like anytime Robert Saleh has the opportunity, he'll pump up his tires, and he really likes him. So, yeah, it's a huge year for him. He might be, given this bigger role. We'll see if he'll be able to handle it. But he's an athletic player. He's talented, and it's been a small sample size, but in that small sample, it's not like he's looked like he's in over his head. He held his own.
Yeah, I agree. I think whenever he did come in at minimal reps, I was a little, okay. I like his speed. I like his, athleticism. I think he thinks quick out there in the field, and I think that this is the season to really prove himself because the Jets do like to have certain packages with those 3 linebackers out there, but they also love to have Michael Carter II in the slot and nickel packages, which I think is one of the more underrated players on the entire Jets roster. What's your thoughts of Michael Carter II? Because I feel like this is the season where he can kind of establish himself as one of the top nickel corners in the league because he has so much to his game that just doesn't get talked about enough. And Robert Saleh praises him, saying this defense would not be as good. He's that kind of glue, that bridge between the secondary and the linebacker core where he's out there making plays, really intelligent, has great chemistry with Sauce and DJ Reed and the safeties back behind him. And he makes plays, man. He makes plays. So what's your thoughts of Carter II? And do you think he has a chance to be, ascend his game to another level in year number 3?
I really do. I like his game a lot. That's a great late round find that you were able to, have come in and play right away and have success. I thought he got better from year 1 into year 2. And everyone talked about Sauce Gardner, and rightfully so. He was a stud last year. He was fantastic. But both DJ Reed and Michael Carter, I think, go under the radar a little bit. And more specifically, Carter. I mean, slot corner is one of the toughest positions to play in the NFL. Corner in general is just so difficult. But then when you're talking about getting these speedy guys on the inside with all that space and going over the middle of the field, it's really not an easy position to play. And I think he does it well. One of the more unsung heroes on that Jets defense. I think he's absolutely someone who could take a step up. He's already, in my opinion, one of the better slot corners, but he could take his game to one of the best, 1 to 3 slot corners in the game. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm all for it, and I really think that he has a chance to. He was making plays early in the season last year, and that pick 6 against the Patriots still haunts me to this day that they called that back. That would have been a 2-pick game, by the way, if that did stand, and he would have 3 picks on the season by then. So I'm going to hit you with a really hard question, but I want you to just sit with it, Matt, and really think about this. Now, I might be a little over my head here, but allow me to because this season's getting me feeling a little crazy. Is this the most stacked Jets roster on paper we have ever seen in your life as a Jets fan heading into a season, talking about on paper, every position, looking at it, depth, talent, just pure roster on paper? Is there a team that was more stacked heading into a season than this year?
So that's really funny that you asked me this question because a few days ago I did a video comparing this roster to the 2010 Jets. It was someone on Twitter asked me about. I forget who it was. Apologies, but it was a really fun exercise, and I did a compare and contrast, and it was closer than I thought it would be. I had this current Jets team I thought is better at quarterback, wide receiver, corner, defensive line, and tight end, where I had the 2010 Jets better at running back, offensive line, linebacker, safety, and special teams. So I think it's close, but I think the high-end talent, there's more high-end talent on this roster than in the 2010. And the quarterback position is significantly better, which is, the most important position in the sport. So I'll say yes. I would say this team is definitely the most talented roster that I've seen. We'll see if they're able to go out there and beat that 11 win mark that the 2010 Jets were able to do. I certainly hope so. But but so far in my lifetime, the 2010 Jets have been my favorite team. I think that's been the best Jets team that I've seen, but hopefully the 2023 Jets team, with all the talent that they have, surpasses that.
The one thing that I always bring up when I'm comparing the 2010 Jets to this year's Jets team is that 2010 Jets team just felt like it was ready to go, and there wasn't really a long-term answer. Like it was filled with great veterans. It wasn't that pipeline of youth that this Jets team has right now that really gets me more excited for the future. Obviously, we do have a 39-year-old quarterback that's not going to be here for the next 10 years, so that's definitely a big question mark. It's not like we have a young 27-year-old stud quarterback to be excited about. We have Aaron Rodgers to be excited about for these next couple of years, hopefully. And hey, who knows? Maybe Zach Wilson's that guy. But I think that the difference between this year and that year is the youth is the star. Like, the stars of this team are young. I mean, rookie of the years, offense and defense, what are we talking about? Like, that's beyond comprehension, Matt. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's a great point, and we talked about a lot already on this show, just the young core that the Jets have, and the from draft classes over the last few years. And you're right. I think outside of the quarterback position, it's still a pretty young team, and they could kind of grow together and grow into it. But yeah, I think really the biggest thing it all comes down to is the quarterback play. That's most important. And Mark Sanchez, for as good as he was that second year, I thought he had a lot of clutch moments and then played well in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers, I would imagine, is going to be the best quarterback that we've seen yet in our Jet fandom, unless something catastrophic happens, which I will not be predicting.
I appreciate that. Another player I kind of want to bring up who just popped in my head, who's another one of those players that is a top 5 player on the Jets, but does not get talked about enough and doesn't get appreciated enough, and has a lot of people just speak bad on him for some reason, is CJ Mosley. CJ Mosley, in my opinion, is I don't want to call him the heart and soul of the defense, but Quinnen Williams is the best player on the team in my eyes, the best player on the defense. Sauce Gardner is close right behind him, but CJ Mosley is so important to this defense in terms of communication and leadership, and he does things that we don't understand as fans because we don't see what's going on in the locker room. We don't see what's going on at camp. We don't see what's going on in practice. He is that quarterback. He sparks fear in the opposing team, and the homework that he does and the ability to just know what's coming and call things out is so freaking important. And he was a freaking second all-team pro last year. It just boggles my mind that some people just continue you get rid of CJ. CJ Mosley is a class act, and he's just a veteran that I think deserves a little more credit than some people give him for. So what's your thoughts of CJ Mosley? Because I think that when it comes from the linebacker role in the NFL scope, I mean, he's playing like a top 10 linebacker. He was ranked as the 9th best linebacker according to those top 10 rankings that's been coming out recently. So what's your overall thoughts of CJ?
Yeah, I think sometimes fans hold his contract over his head. Like, they say, oh, he's not worth the $17 million or whatever his cap hit is. And that is, I mean, in a vacuum, that's true, but you can't blame, a Mike Maccagnan mistake or hold a Mike Maccagnan mistake over CJ Mosley's head. I think he is one of the smartest football players that I've seen, and especially at that linebacker position. Like you said, he's the leader of that defense. Sauce and Quinnen, I would put ahead of him, and I think are better than him, but he's putting guys in the right spot. He's the quarterback of that defense, and yeah, he probably at this point in his career probably lost a step from his Ravens days and from the 2019 Jets that we saw in that first game against Buffalo, but still a very, very good linebacker, an above average linebacker who is a leader on an elite level defense. He is definitely more important than I think some people give him credit for.
I don't think this Jets defense is as good without him. I just really don't. I mean, You throw in Jamie Sherwood, we were talking about him. If CJ goes down, Sherwood taking on that load, I mean, I don't think we can comprehend. He's literally the quarterback of the defense. And the quarterback's job on the offense is to organize everything, is to know what the defense is showing, is to make sure that he knows what's going on at every single player on offense. And that's what the linebacker's job is at that quarterback spot for the defense, is to know what offense is coming, is to line people up. And that takes a lot. It takes a lot of communication. And I think that CJ Mosley, maybe he's not making the flashy plays, even though he does have a couple here and there with those big booms. But yeah, and another thing about the defense, Matt, that this Jets defense, in order for them to take that next step to get better, is the takeaways. And I think that Jeff Ulbrich had such an interesting thing to say when he was on the Jets podcast with Eric Allen a couple weeks ago. He said that he felt that it was hard for this Jets defense to force turnovers and to make plays at the back end of the season last year. And he tried to say it as nice as possible. But when you have a shitty offense like we had, it kind of forces teams to play a brand of football that's way more conservative to the point where they're not worried about our offense. So their offensive approach, the opponent's offensive approach, is just very, very conservative. Let's go kick a field goal. Let's not be aggressive. But if this Jets offense this season is going to take that step that we're hopeful for with Aaron Rodgers, and we put points up on the board, it's going to force some teams to play from behind now. It's going to force some teams to be more aggressive. And more aggressive teams forces the Jets defense to get more turnovers and to make more scoring opportunities. And I think that's something that gets me excited. So what do you think about this Jets defense in terms of taking that next step into a more scoring defense? Because I think that is the difference of making that step, getting pick sixes, recovering fumbles, just getting more interceptions and giving this offense more opportunities. So what's your thoughts about this Jets defensive step next season?
You're right. And I loved the Ulbrich quote, by the way. I thought that was fantastic because he's right. Like, there weren't very many games last year where your opponent was having to throw themselves back into it. With Aaron Rodgers, the hope is, and maybe it's not every single week, but with an otherwise good defense and a good quarterback, you would think that you're going to be up late in games, which means that, you know, opposing teams are going to have to try to throw themselves back into games, which in theory creates more opportunities for, number one, your pass rush to get home. And then number two, for your guys in the secondary to start making plays. Sauce Gardner didn't have a ton of interceptions last year. Not that you hold that against him, but that is an area the Jets could absolutely improve in, is turnovers. And I think there's going to be a correlation with the Jets offense and points improving, scoring more points and then creating more turnovers, just because, you know, in the situations that the opposing teams are going to find themselves in.
I agree. And with that pass rush improving, it's only going to help out the secondary even more to get those balls that deflected at the line of scrimmage. That's just throwing out some ducks, and hopefully this Jets team can take advantage of that. And I want to just peel back another layer on the offense real quick.
Sure.
There's another dimension to the offense that I think that we're about to witness that we have not seen from a Jets offense in quite some time, and that's simply the deep ball. Aaron Rodgers is one of the better deep throwers of the football ever. I mean, I don't think that's pretty much of an argument. And having a guy like Mecole Hardman who can stretch the defense, and having a guy like Allen Lazard who is actually a pretty good deep threat, not to mention Garrett Wilson. What's your thoughts of the Jets airing it out? I think it comes down to setting up the run game, and the play action is going to open up those things up. But with the weapons and with Aaron Rodgers, I think we have a chance to see something of bombs. And we are not used to seeing bombs.
No, and that's so true, because last year the Jets really weren't attacking down the field. So what teams are doing is they're stacking the box, making it harder to complete those 10-yard in throws, and then making it harder on the run game. But this offense is much, Aaron Rodgers was the big addition this offseason, but I still think that this is an offense and a team that's going to want to be a run first team. Not necessarily, they're not going to run like Ravens with Lamar Jackson level or Titans with Derrick Henry level of running the football, but they'll lean more on the run game than I think some people are anticipating. But that opens things up for you to take those chances, to build off the play action. You loop that in. And I think that, to me, that's really going to be the bread and butter of this West Coast offense. And it'll allow you to, take a couple of shots down the field when the safety starts to creep in, because Breece Hall's been gashing them all game. And then you take that deep shot to either Hardman with his speed or Garrett. We didn't really get to see him, going down the field too much. He has really good speed as well. So, yeah, I expect this offense to be much more open in 2023.
Oh, how refreshing is this, Matt? We have actually reasonable expectations for this Jets offense to look competent. Isn't that a stretch?
I know. Well, we're just so used to literally bottom 5 offenses. If they're even just league average, if they're in the top 12 offense, we'd all be ecstatic over it.
I mean, we're 8-1 with the top 12 offense with the defense potential. But Matt, I want to leave you off with a couple more just preseason questions, since that's what's on the horizon in training camp. Stars of camp and preseason, they come together. Same question, like, who are the stars that's going to be really getting a lot of playing time in preseason that Jets fans are going to fall in love with the most in preseason?
Yeah, on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with Ruckert, who is someone that we talked about a lot. I think he's going to get a lot of playing time with some of the, the veterans that are in front of him. You're not going to see a ton of Conklin. You're not going to see a ton of Uzama, both vets. So I think he gets a ton of reps. And on the defensive side, I'm going to go with someone who had a really nice preseason last year, but I think he builds on that. And in Michael Clemens, I think he's going to, cement himself as a key piece of the rotation on defense. A guy, two guys from the 2022 draft class, but, later round picks, depth guys who I think are going to show that they, belong and that they're going to get a bigger role this year.
Do you think there's a realistic chance of Zach Wilson making sure that Aaron Rodgers is living in hell throughout this entire training camp?
I don't think I don't think he's pushing for his job or anything, but I think best case scenario is that he shows that he's competent and can be a backup. And if God forbid Aaron Rodgers has to miss a game, he could come in and be serviceable. No one's asking him to be Aaron Rodgers, but you just can't be, 77 yards against the Patriots again. Like you need to have a competent guy who can come in and manage. If you get Zach Wilson against Buffalo in that win at home as a backup, you take that.
I was about to say, the one thing that we learned from Zach is that we can win with him because of how good we are around him, but we can't win because of him unless he develops into the player that we thought we were getting with that second overall pick. So let's all hope that Zach Wilson doesn't touch the field unless it's because we are winning and he comes in the fourth quarter, or it's week 18 and we're resting the starters because we have a first-round bye. So yeah, this season's going to be fun, baby. So Matt, cannot thank you enough for joining the show. This was the training camp preview on Jets Media, joined by Matt O'Leary. If you guys did not check out his channel, please make sure you do so down below in the description. And always, we appreciate each and every one of you guys in the chat. If you guys could do me a solid favor by simply hitting that like button, let's get to 100 likes. We're at 76 likes. I think we can get up to 100 right before this stream ends. So make sure you guys hit those buttons. We appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in. Training camp opens tomorrow, baby. The veterans, the rookies, they report tomorrow. I don't know if they're going to actually practice tomorrow. It's just like a reporting day, but we'll find out together. I'll be at training camp this weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. So if you guys are going to be there, let me know. Would love to meet you guys. Going to be a freaking awesome time. Matt, anything else you want to announce to the people and what you got cooking up for training camp content-wise in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. So Matt O'Leary NY on YouTube and social media. I have a Just Jets podcast coming out tomorrow where we're diving in, same thing, going into training camp, talking about position battles to watch for, players to watch, what we're excited about. And I just can't wait to get New York Jets football back.
New York Jets football's back, and there's a reason to be excited, baby. We got people talking crap on our team because they're so scared to watch us rise to the top. But they cannot bring us down because this Jets fandom is special. We're strong, and this Jets team's ready to take flight, baby. Let's go, Jets. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace and love as always. Catch you guys next time. Let's go, Jets.